Princess Xylith stood at the viewing window of the royal palace, looking out at the 3 moons of Lumeris Prime. The smallest moon glowed with a soft blue light, much like how she felt, small and distant compared to the larger celestial bodies. At just 3 feet tall, Xylith was considered tiny even among her own people. The average Lumerian stood at least 5 feet tall, and most other species in the known galaxy towered well above 6 feet. She turned away from the window when she heard the door slide open. Her advisor, Madame Ilara, entered the royal chamber, with a data tablet in hand and concern etched across her aged face. "The noble son of the Arcturus system has declined your invitation, Your Highness," Ilara said softly. "That makes 17 royal families who have rejected a formal courtship." Xylith nodded, having expected this outcome. "What reason did he give this time?" "The same as the others. Concerns about the genetic compatibility and the—" Ilara paused, clearly uncomfortable. "My size," Xylith finished for her. "Just say it. Everyone else does when they think I cannot hear them." Ilara bowed her head. "Yes, Princess. The Arcturian royal family expressed concerns about your physical stature and whether any offspring would be fit to rule." Xylith walked to her desk, her steps quick and determined despite the heaviness in her heart. On the desk sat an ancient timepiece that had belonged to her mother. The sands within it were running low, just like her time to find a mate. "How long do I have, Ilara? Be exact." 6 months and 4 days before your 30th stellar cycle is complete," Ilara replied. "After that, according to the ancient law of succession, you must forfeit your right to rule if you remain unmated." Xylith picked up a small figurine from her desk, a model of the first Lumerian starship. Her people had been exploring the stars for thousands of years. They had built one of the most advanced civilizations in the known galaxy. Yet here she was, about to lose her birthright because she had been born small. "The Royal Council is meeting now, discussing your situation," Ilara said. "They have sent me to bring you to them. They say they have found a solution." Xylith raised an eyebrow. "A solution? After years of searching every noble family in 17 star systems? They are considering unconventional options." The walk to the council chambers was long. Xylith had long ago ordered that no special accommodations be made for her size. She climbed the same steps and walked the same hallways as everyone else, refusing to show any weakness that would further undermine her claim to the throne. The grand doors to the council chamber opened. Around a large crystal table sat 12 of the oldest and most respected Lumerians. At the head of the table was Grand Marshal Krax, a decorated military commander whose family had served the royal line for generations. "Princess Xylith," Krax's deep voice boomed across the chamber. "We have deliberated on your unique situation and have reached a consensus." Xylith took her seat at the table, using the hidden step beneath it that allowed her to sit at the same height as the others. "I am listening, Grand Marshal." An older counselor named Vex brought up a holographic display in the center of the table. "We have recently established diplomatic contact with a newly spacefaring species from a planet called Earth. They call themselves humans." The hologram showed images of the humans. They were varied in appearance, but most stood between 5 and 6 feet tall. Not giants like the Draviks or the Centaurians, but not small like her either. "The humans have been eager to establish relations with advanced civilizations," Counselor Vex continued. "They are new to the galactic community, but they show remarkable adaptability and resilience." Krax leaned forward. "We propose expanding your search to include these humans. Their genetic structure is surprisingly compatible with Lumerian DNA, according to preliminary studies, and they might not share the prejudices of the older spacefaring races." Xylith stared at the rotating images of humans in the hologram. It was a desperate move, reaching out to a species so new to the stars that they barely had colonies beyond their home system. "You want me to take a human mate?" she asked, her voice steady despite her surprise. "We want you to consider all options," Ilara said gently, "before time runs out." Xylith looked around at the council members' faces. Some showed pity, others calculation. She straightened her back. "Send the invitation," she said firmly. "Let See if these humans are truly as different as you claim. Jack Powell stood in front of the large window of the Earth Embassy on New Geneva Station. The stars looked different from here than they did back home in Arizona. A month ago, he had been flying test planes for the Navy. Now he was millions of miles from Earth, waiting to hear about his next assignment as a diplomatic liaison. The door to the office slid open, and Director Susan Miller walked in with a folder in her hands. "Powell, I have a new assignment for you," she said, placing the folder on the desk. "It's unusual, even by our new standards of unusual." Jack picked up the folder. Inside was information about a place called the Lumerian Empire. He had heard about them in his briefings. They were one of the oldest and most advanced civilizations in the galaxy. They've specifically requested human representatives for what they're calling a cultural exchange, Susan explained. But there's something they're not telling us. The request came directly from their royal palace. Jack flipped through the pages. "Why me? I'm not exactly trained for royal meetings. I'm a pilot." "That's exactly why. The Lumerians value practical skills and adaptability. They requested someone with a background in exploration and quick thinking." Susan smiled. "Also, you're the only one who scored perfect marks on the interspecies diplomacy simulations." Jack sighed. "When do I leave?" "The Lumerian transport ship arrives tomorrow. Pack for at least a month." "And Jack," Susan's face became serious, "remember that everything you do will reflect on Earth. We're still the new kids in the galactic neighborhood." The next day, Jack boarded the Lumerian ship. It was unlike anything he had ever seen. The walls seemed to glow with a soft light that changed color slightly as he walked. The ceilings were high, and everything felt oversized. A tall Lumerian, with silver skin and large eyes, approached him. "Welcome aboard, human Jack Powell. I am Ventress, first pilot of the Royal Transport." His voice had a musical quality to it. "Your quarters have been prepared according to human specifications." Jack followed Ventress through the ship. They passed other Lumerians who stared at him with obvious curiosity. Some whispered to each other as he walked by. "Is there something wrong?" Jack asked Ventress. The pilot hesitated. "Many of our crew have never seen a human before. There are, also, rumors about why you have been summoned." "What kind of rumors?" Ventress did not answer, instead gesturing toward a door. "These are your quarters. We will arrive at Lumeris Prime in 3 cycles, approximately 72 of your Earth hours." The journey passed quickly. Jack spent his time learning about Lumerian culture from the ship's database and trying to get used to the slightly higher gravity. He noticed that the crew watched him with increasing interest, but no one would explain why. When they arrived at Lumeris Prime, Jack was amazed by the beauty of the planet. Multiple rings surrounded it, shimmering with colors he had never seen before. The cities below glowed like jewels against the purple-blue landscape. "We will transport directly to the royal palace," Ventress informed him. "The princess is waiting." "The princess?" Jack asked, surprised. "I thought this was a general cultural exchange." Ventress finally looked uncomfortable. "That is partially correct." A beam of light surrounded them, and suddenly they were standing in a grand hall with high ceilings and walls that seemed to be made of some kind of living crystal. A group of tall Lumerians stood waiting, dressed in elaborate robes. An older female stepped forward. "Human Jack Powell, I am Madame Alara, Royal Advisor. Welcome to Lumeris Prime." Jack bowed slightly, remembering his diplomatic training. "Thank you for your welcome. I'm honored to represent Earth in this cultural exchange." Ilara exchanged glances with the others. "Yes, about that. There is something you should know about your visit here." Before she could continue, a side door opened. The Lumerians all bowed deeply. Jack turned and was surprised to see a small figure enter the room. She was a Lumerian but stood only about 3 feet tall. Despite her size, she carried herself with unmistakable authority. "This is Her Royal Highness, Princess Xylith, heir to the Lumerian Empire," Ilara announced. The princess approached Jack, looking up at him with large, intelligent eyes. "So you are the human," she said, her voice clear and strong. "Welcome to my world, Jack Powell." Jack bowed. "Thank you, Your Highness." Do you know why you are here? Princess Xylith asked directly. For a cultural exchange, Jack answered. The princess smiled slightly. That is part of the truth. The rest is that you are here as a potential suitor. I need a mate, and every male in 17 star systems has rejected me. You, Jack Powell, are what my advisors call our final option. Jack stared at Princess Xylith in shock. A suitor? You mean like a potential husband? The princess nodded. That is correct. I require a mate before my 30th stellar cycle completes, or I lose my right to rule. That deadline is in 6 months. Jack looked around the grand hall at the faces of the Lumerian officials. Some looked hopeful, others embarrassed, and a few seemed openly disgusted. With all due respect, Your Highness, Jack said carefully, I'm a diplomatic liaison. Not whatever this is. I wasn't informed about any of this. A tall, muscular Lumerian stepped forward. His uniform was decorated with medals and symbols of rank. This is exactly why we did not inform Earth of our true intentions. Humans are still primitive and would not understand the honor being offered. And you are? Jack asked, trying to keep his voice level. Grand Marshal Crax, chief military advisor to the throne, the Lumerian said with obvious pride. And I have serious doubts about whether any human is worthy to be consort to our princess. Then why am I here? Jack asked. Princess Xylith raised her hand, silencing Crax before he could respond. Because all other options have failed. You are here because humans are new to the galactic community and might see beyond my physical stature. Jack felt uncomfortable. This was far outside his training. I think there's been a misunderstanding. I'm not here to. You are not being forced into anything, human Jack Powell, Madame Alara said quickly. The princess merely asks that you stay as our guest for 1 lunar cycle. Get to know our culture, our world, and yes, our princess. After that time, both you and Her Highness can decide if there is any potential for a formal courtship. A month, Jack translated. You want me to stay for a month? Consider it a true cultural exchange, Princess Xylith said. You learn about us, we learn about humans. Jack thought about his orders to promote good relations with advanced civilizations. Refusing outright might damage Earth's standing with one of the most powerful empires in the galaxy. I'll stay as a cultural representative, he said carefully. But I'm not agreeing to anything beyond that. Princess Xylith smiled. That is acceptable. Later that day, Jack was shown to his quarters in the royal palace. The room was enormous, by human standards, with ceilings at least 15 feet high. Everything seemed designed for beings much larger than himself. He had just finished unpacking when there was a soft knock at his door. It slid open to reveal Princess Xylith. May I enter? She asked. Jack nodded, surprised by her visit. Of course, Your Highness. The princess walked in, looking even smaller in the large room. I wanted to apologize for the awkward introduction earlier. I know this situation is not what you expected. It's definitely a surprise, Jack admitted. On Earth, arranged marriages went out of style centuries ago for most cultures. We do not have arranged marriages, Xylith corrected him. But royal succession follows strict rules. My parents died when I was young, and I have no siblings. If I do not secure the succession, my cousin will take the throne, and he would lead our people down a dangerous path. Jack sat down so they could speak more at eye level. Why were you rejected by so many potential mates? From what I can see, your only unusual trait is your height. Xylith's expression hardened. In a galaxy of giants, being small is seen as a critical weakness. Most species evolved from predators, so physical power is highly valued. The Lumerian Empire is respected because we are both technologically advanced and physically imposing. She gestured to herself. I am considered an anomaly, a genetic throwback to our distant past. Jack thought about human history. On Earth, leadership hasn't been about physical size for thousands of years. Some of our greatest leaders were not physically imposing at all. That is precisely why the Council suggested humans, Xylith said. Your species values different traits you see beyond the physical. Before Jack could respond, an alarm sounded throughout the palace. Red lights flashed along the walls. What's happening? Jack asked, standing up. Xylith's face became serious. That is the royal security alert. Something is wrong. She reached for a communication device on her wrist. This is the princess, report. A voice responded through the device. Security breach in the Eastern Wing, Your Highness. Possible assassination attempt. Royal guards are responding now. Xylith looked at Jack, her expression grim. It seems your stay with us will be more exciting than planned. Human Jack Powell. The red lights continued to flash as Princess Xylith moved quickly toward the door. Stay here where it's safe, she ordered Jack. Jack shook his head. I have combat training. I can help. Xylith paused, studying him with surprise. You are a diplomat. I was a military pilot first, Jack explained. All Earth representatives have defense training. After a moment's hesitation, Xylith nodded. Follow me, but stay behind the royal guards. They hurried through the palace corridors. The high ceilings and wide hallways that had seemed impressive before now felt exposed and dangerous. Royal guards ran past them, carrying weapons Jack didn't recognize. When they reached the Eastern Wing, they found several guards surrounding a broken window. Glass-like material lay scattered across the floor, and a strange device was attached. To the wall nearby, Grand Marshal Krax was already there, examining the scene. He turned when he saw Jack and Xylith approach. Your Highness, you should not be here. It isn't safe. What happened? Xylith demanded. An infiltration device, Krax explained, pointing to the object on the wall. It cut through the palace defenses and broke the window. We believe assassins were attempting to enter but fled when the alarms triggered. Jack moved closer to examine the device. May I? He asked a nearby guard. The guard looked to Xylith, who nodded permission. Jack studied the device without touching it. This doesn't make sense. Why break a window when you could just... He stopped mid-sentence and turned to look up at the ceiling. There, partially hidden in the ornate designs, was a small blinking light. Everyone out. Now, Jack shouted, pointing. Upward. That's not an infiltration device, it's a distraction. His military training kicked in. Jack grabbed Xylith's arm and pulled her toward the door just as the ceiling exploded. Debris rained down, and a thick gas began filling the room. In the confusion, Jack saw a dark figure drop from the ceiling, moving directly toward the princess. Without hesitation, Jack pushed Xylith behind him and faced the attacker. The assassin was tall and thin, wearing a breathing mask and dark clothing. It lunged forward with a blade aimed at Jack's chest. Jack sidestepped the attack, using the assassin's momentum against it, a basic self-defense move he'd learned in training. The attacker stumbled forward, surprised by the human's quick reaction. Royal guards rushed to help, but the gas was making them slow and disoriented. Jack held his breath as much as possible, keeping his eyes on the assassin. Get the princess out, he shouted to the guards. The assassin charged again. This time, Jack couldn't fully dodge. The blade cut across his arm, but he managed to land a solid punch to the attacker's midsection. Through the gas, Jack saw Princess Xylith. Instead of fleeing, she had grabbed a weapon from a fallen guard and was moving toward them. Despite her small size, she held the weapon with confidence. Behind you, she called out. Jack dropped to the floor as Xylith fired the weapon. A burst of energy passed over him and hit a second attacker that had appeared from the ceiling. Working together, Jack and Xylith moved toward the exit as the guards regained control of the situation. Once in the clear hallway, emergency systems activated, sealing off the gas-filled room. Medical staff rushed to treat Jack's wound. The cut wasn't deep, but it bled freely. You risked your life, Xylith said as a medic applied treatment to Jack's arm. You could have run, but you stayed to protect me. Jack winced as the medicine stung his wound. That's what we do where I come from. We don't leave people behind. Grand Marshal Krax approached, his expression a mix of surprise and reluctant respect. The human's warning saved lives. The gas was designed to incapacitate Lumerians quickly. He looked at Jack. Our physiology is different from yours. That is why you remained conscious longer." "Who would want to harm the princess?" Jack asked. "There are many who do not wish to see me take the throne," Xylith explained. "Some believe my size makes me unworthy. Others have political motives." As they spoke, Madame Alara hurried toward them. "Your Highness, are you injured?" she asked, anxiously. "I am unharmed thanks to our human guest," Xylith replied. She looked at Jack with new interest in her eyes. "It seems there is more to humans than we realized." That evening, word of Jack's actions spread throughout the palace. As he rested in his quarters, a message arrived inviting him to the celestial selection ceremony the following week, a formal event where Xylith would officially meet potential consorts. Jack stared at the invitation, unsure how to feel. What had started as a diplomatic misunderstanding was becoming much more complicated. The next few days passed in a blur of activity. Jack attended cultural briefings, toured the capital city, and learned more about Lumerian history. Everywhere he went, people stared at him, the human who had helped save their princess. One morning, Jack was exploring the palace gardens when he noticed something odd. A maintenance worker was placing a small device behind some decorative plants. When the worker saw Jack watching, he quickly hurried away. Jack walked over and examined the device. It looked like a recording tool of some kind. He picked it up carefully and decided to show it to someone he could trust. He found Princess Xylith in the royal library, studying ancient texts on a large digital screen. She looked up when he entered. "Jack Powell, I am glad to see you," she said. "Are you enjoying the gardens?" "They're beautiful," Jack replied. "But I found something concerning." He showed her the device. Someone was hiding this behind the plants. Xylith took the device, her expression growing serious. "This is a surveillance recorder. It should not be in the gardens." "The worker ran away when he saw me watching," Jack added. Xylith placed the device on the table. First the assassination attempt, now this. She looked troubled. "Something is happening in my palace." "Could it be connected to your succession?" Jack asked. "Possibly." Xylith hesitated, then seemed to make a decision. "There is something I should show you. Something few outsiders have seen." She led Jack to a hidden panel in the library wall. When she pressed her palm against it, the panel slid open to reveal a narrow staircase. "These stairs lead to the old catacombs beneath the palace," Xylith explained as they descended. "They date back thousands of years to the early days of our civilization." The staircase was steep, and Jack had to duck to avoid hitting his head on the low ceiling. For Xylith, with her smaller size, it was a comfortable fit. "These passages were built for people your size," Jack observed. "Yes," Xylith said. "That is part of what I want to show you." They reached the bottom of the stairs and entered a vast underground chamber. The walls were covered with ancient writing and images. Jack saw depictions of Lumerians throughout their history. Surprisingly, the earliest images showed Lumerians who were all short, about Xylith's height. "Your people were smaller in the past," Jack said, studying the images. "Yes. For thousands of years, all Lumerians were what would now be considered small." Xylith walked to a large display case containing old scientific equipment. "Then, about 5,000 years ago, our scientists developed genetic modification techniques. Our ancestors chose to make each generation taller and stronger to compete with other species in the galaxy." Jack looked at the progression of images along the wall. Each generation of Lumerians grew taller than the last. "But you're small, like your ancestors," Jack said. Xylith nodded. "I am what geneticists call a throwback. A rare genetic combination that expresses traits from our distant past. Some consider it a defect, but it is simply part of our genetic history expressing itself." As they moved deeper into the catacombs, Jack noticed a section of wall that seemed newer than the rest. "What's behind there?" Xylith frowned. "That area should be open. It leads to the ancient throne room." She pressed her hand against the wall, but nothing happened. "This is concerning. These areas are supposed to be accessible to the royal family at all times. Jack examined the edges of the sealed section. It looks like it was closed recently. The material is different. We should leave, Xylith said suddenly. Something is not right here. As they turned to go, Jack spotted a small object on the floor. He picked it up, a military insignia. The design matched the ones on Grand Marshal Crax's uniform. Does Crax come down here often? Jack asked, showing her the insignia. Xylith took it, her expression darkening. Crax has claimed he avoids the catacombs because the ceilings are too low for comfort. He should have no reason to be here. When they returned to the main palace, Xylith suggested they check the official visitor logs for the catacombs. They went to the security office but found it empty. That's strange, Xylith said. There should always be someone monitoring security. Jack noticed the computer was still active. Let's check the logs ourselves. They searched the records and found something disturbing. According to the logs, Grand Marshal Crax had visited the catacombs 17 times in the past month. And each visit corresponded with the date a potential suitor for Xylith had rejected her. He's been doing something down there, Jack said. Something connected to your courtships. Xylith's eyes widened with realization. The failed matches. They weren't coincidences. I think, Jack said carefully, someone has been sabotaging your chances of finding a mate. Princess Xylith paced in her private chambers. Jack sat nearby watching her process the disturbing discovery they had made. If Crax has been sabotaging my courtships, he must have a reason, Xylith said. He has served the royal family his entire life. Who would take the throne if you don't find a mate in time? Jack asked. Xylith stopped pacing. My cousin, Lord Vex, he and Crax have always been close allies. So Crax wants your cousin on the throne instead of you, Jack said. Have you told anyone about what we found? Not yet. We need more proof before making accusations against the Grand Marshal. Their conversation was interrupted by an urgent knock. Madame Alara entered, her face tight with worry. Your Highness, we have received troubling news, she said. The Draxian Collective has launched attacks on our border worlds. 3 colonies are under heavy assault. Xylith's personal concerns immediately gave way to her royal duties. Has the Imperial fleet responded? That's the problem, Ilara explained. Our fleet is scattered. Crax ordered training exercises that spread our ships across 5 sectors. We cannot mount an effective defense. Jack saw the suspicion in Xylith's eyes. This is too convenient, she said quietly. The Royal Council is gathering in the war room, Ilara continued. They are requesting your presence immediately. Xylith turned to Jack. Come with me. I want you there. Me? I'm not a military advisor, Jack said, surprised. No, but you have a different perspective. And right now, I don't know who I can trust. War Room was a large circular chamber with a holographic display in the center. When Jack and Xylith entered, the council members were already arguing loudly. Grand Marshal Crax stood at the main control panel, directing the display to show the Draxian attack. The situation is critical, Crax announced. The Draxians have deployed their new dreadnoughts. Our border defenses are falling. How did they penetrate our early warning systems? Xylith demanded. Crax barely glanced at her. They must have developed new stealth technology. The important question is how we respond now. An older council member spoke up. We should surrender the border worlds. We cannot defend them without risking our core systems. Surrender? Xylith was shocked. Those colonies have millions of our people. It is regrettable, Crax said, but strategically necessary. Jack studied the holographic display showing the positions of the Draxian ships and the scattered Lumerian fleet. Something didn't look right. May I ask a question? Jack said. The council members turned to stare at him. Crax frowned. This is not the time for human curiosity. Let him speak, Xylith commanded. Jack pointed to the display. These Draxian ships, how big are they? A council member answered. The dreadnoughts are approximately 3 miles long. Why do you ask? And these asteroid fields they're avoiding. What's the average size of those asteroids? The council member consulted the data. Most are between 50 and 200 feet across. Jack nodded. That's what I thought. On Earth, we have a military strategy called asymmetric warfare. When you can't match an enemy's strength, you use the environment to your advantage. He moved closer to the display and pointed to the dense asteroid field near the main colony. The Draxian ships are too large to navigate this field, but smaller ships could move through it easily. Xylith understood immediately. A surprise attack from an unexpected direction. Exactly, Jack said. And you would need pilots who can navigate tight spaces quickly. Our standard pilots train for open space combat, Krax objected. They aren't asteroid racers. But I am, Xylith said quietly. Everyone turned to look at her. Your Highness, you cannot be suggesting... Krax began. I've been asteroid racing since I was a child, Xylith said. My size makes me ideal for the small racing ships. I can lead a squadron through the field. This is absurd, Krax protested. The princess cannot risk herself in combat. My people are in danger, Xylith said firmly, and my size, which you and others have always seen as a weakness, may be exactly what we need now. She turned to the council. Prepare the scout ships. I will lead a squadron through the asteroid field while our main forces distract the Draxians from the front. The council erupted in arguments, but Jack saw the determination in Xylith's eyes. For the first time, her small stature wasn't a liability, it was an advantage. I'll go with you, Jack said. You're not a space pilot, Xylith reminded him. I'm a pilot, and I've trained in simulators for various spacecraft. I can fly one of your ships if you give me a crash course. Xylith smiled at his choice of words. Let's hope the crash part isn't literal. 2 hours later, Jack found himself in a Lumerian scout ship following Princess Xylith's lead vessel into the asteroid field. The ship responded well to his touch, though it was more sensitive than any aircraft he had flown on Earth. A quick training session in the simulator had given him the basics, but now he was flying for real with lives at stake. Remember to follow my exact path. Xylith's voice came through the communication system. The gravity currents in this field can pull you off course if you stray. Understood, Jack replied, keeping his eyes on her ship ahead. Behind them, 10 more scout ships followed, each piloted by volunteers who had trained with Xylith in asteroid racing. They were all smaller Lumerians, many who had faced the same prejudice as their princess because of their size. The asteroid field loomed ahead, a dense cloud of spinning rocks ranging from car-sized to massive chunks bigger than buildings. To an untrained eye, it looked impossible to navigate. Stay close, Xylith instructed as her ship dove into the field. Jack followed, his heart racing as he guided his vessel between two large asteroids with barely enough room to pass. The ship's sensors blared warnings about the close proximity of the rocks, but he kept his focus on Xylith's path ahead. For 20 tense minutes they wove through the field. Twice Jack's ship scraped against smaller rocks, sending it spinning until he regained control. One of the ships behind them wasn't so lucky, clipping a larger asteroid and having to turn back with damage to its stabilizers. Finally, they emerged, on the other side of the field. From this position they could see the backs of the massive Draxian dreadnoughts. The enemy ships were focused on the frontal assault from the main Lumerian fleet and hadn't noticed the small squadron behind them. Target their engine cooling systems, Xylith ordered. Our weapons aren't powerful enough to penetrate their main armor, but we can disable their mobility. The squadron spread out, each ship selecting a target. Jack maneuvered into position behind one of the smaller Draxian vessels. He locked his weapon system onto the glowing blue section that Xylith had identified as the cooling system, and fired. The Lumerian weapons hit their marks with precision. Alarms began blaring across the Draxian fleet as ships lost power and mobility. Caught by surprise, the Draxians scrambled to respond to the attack from behind. The plan is working, Jack called out. With the Draxian fleet distracted and several of their ships disabled, the main Lumerian forces pressed their advantage from the front. Caught in the crossfire, the Draxian commander made the call to retreat. As the enemy ships limped away, cheers erupted across the Lumerian communication channels. Their border worlds were saved. When they returned to the palace, Xylith was greeted as a hero. The council members who had doubted her now praised her quick thinking and bravery. Even some who had previously dismissed her because of her size were looking at her with new respect. Grand Marshal Krax, however, was notably absent from the celebration. "Where is Krax?" Xylith asked Madame Ilara. "He left immediately after your victory was announced," Ilara replied. "He claimed he needed to coordinate the fleet's regrouping." Jack and Xylith exchanged knowing glances. Something wasn't right. Later, that evening as the celebrations continued, Xylith pulled Jack aside into a quiet corridor. "Thank you for your help today," she said. "Your strategy saved many lives." "It was your flying that made it work," Jack replied. "You were amazing out there." Xylith smiled. "It seems my size finally proved useful for something." "Your size has never been the issue," Jack said earnestly. "Leadership isn't about how tall you stand, but about how you think and act when it matters most." Xylith looked up at him, studying his face. "You truly believe that, don't you? On Earth, we learned long ago that physical traits don't determine someone's worth or ability," Jack said. "Some of our greatest leaders would have been considered small by your standards." "I wish more in the galaxy shared that view," Xylith said softly. Their moment was interrupted by Lord Vex, who approached with several other council members. "Your Highness," Vex said with a bow. "The council wishes to speak with you about the upcoming celestial selection ceremony. Given today's events, some feel it should be postponed." "Postponed?" Xylith asked. "Why?" "Today has proven your leadership capabilities," Vex explained, though his tone suggested he wasn't pleased. "Some believe the succession law itself should be reconsidered given the circumstances. And you, cousin, what do you believe?" Xylith asked directly. Vex's expression hardened. "I believe traditions exist for a reason, Your Highness. The law requires you to choose a mate before your 30th cycle, and that deadline still approaches." As Vex walked away, Jack noticed something fall from his pocket, a small communication device. He picked it up and showed it to Xylith. "This looks like it matches the recording device we found in the garden," he said quietly. Xylith took it, her expression grim. "The conspiracy goes deeper than we thought." The day of the celestial selection ceremony arrived. The great hall of the palace was filled with representatives from across the galaxy, come to witness Princess Xylith's choice of a consort. After her victory against the Draxians, many who had previously dismissed her were now eager to align themselves with the future Empress. Jack stood to the side of the hall, dressed in formal Earth diplomatic attire. The past week had been spent gathering evidence against Grand Marshal Krax and Lord Vex. With Madame Ilara's help, they had discovered recordings of the two conspiring to keep Xylith from finding a mate so that Vex could claim the throne. "Are you ready?" Ilara asked, approaching Jack quietly. "As ready as I'll ever be," Jack replied. "Is everything in place?" Ilara nodded. "The royal guards loyal to the princess are positioned throughout the hall. They will act on her signal." At the far end of the hall, a commotion signaled Xylith's arrival. She entered wearing traditional royal robes that had been modified for her small stature. Instead of making her look diminutive, the well-fitted garments emphasized her regal bearing. The crowd fell silent as she walked to the ancient crystal throne. "Welcome, honored guests," Xylith's voice carried clearly through the hall. "Today is traditionally the day I would select a consort, as required by our ancient laws of succession." Grand Marshal Krax stood nearby, looking confident. Lord Vex was seated in a position of honor, a slight smile on his face. They believed that no suitable match would be announced, and Xylith would be forced to concede her claim to the throne. "However," Xylith continued, "before we proceed with the ceremony, there is a matter of imperial security that must be addressed." She gestured, and the hall's main doors opened. Royal guards entered, escorting several Lumerian officers. "These loyal officers have uncovered evidence of treason against the throne," Xylith announced. "Grand Marshal Krax and Lord Vex have conspired to undermine the succession and orchestrated the Draxian attack on our border worlds." Gasps filled the hall. Krax's face darkened with rage. "This is outrageous," he shouted. Where is your proof? Xylith nodded to Alara, who activated a projection in the center of the hall. The gathered audience heard recordings of Krax and Vex, planning to sabotage Xylith's courtships and coordinating with Draxian contacts. You manipulated our traditions to serve your ambition, Xylith said, looking directly at her cousin. You believed my size made me unworthy to rule, so you conspired to prevent me from fulfilling the requirements of succession. Royal guards. Move to surround Krax and Vex. The succession law is clear, Vex shouted desperately. Without a mate you cannot rule. You are correct about one thing, cousin, Xylith said calmly. Our laws must be respected. That is why I have spent the past week studying our most ancient legal texts. She stood from her throne and addressed the assembly. The original law states that the ruler must secure the succession through a suitable alliance. For thousands of years this has been interpreted to mean a mate of appropriate status. But our ancestors' words speak of alliance, not merely marriage. Murmurs spread through the crowd as Xylith continued. Today, I announce two decisions. First, Grand Marshal. Krax and Lord Vex are removed from their positions and will face trial for their crimes. Second, I propose a new interpretation of our succession law, one that honors its original intent while recognizing that leadership takes many forms. She turned to look at Jack, and their eyes met across the hall. The human, Jack Powell, has demonstrated wisdom, courage, and a perspective our empire desperately needs. Earth is new to the galactic community, but they offer fresh insights unclouded by ancient prejudices. I propose a diplomatic union with Earth, with Jack Powell as Earth's representative. Jack stepped forward into the center of the hall, standing, tall but humbled by the significance of the moment. This alliance fulfills the requirement of the succession law, Xylith declared, and it opens a new chapter in our history, one where we remember that the greatness of leaders is measured by their actions, not their physical stature. One by one, the council members and representatives from other worlds stood to signal their approval. The guards led Krax and Vex away as the hall erupted in applause. Later, as the celebration continued around them, Jack and Xylith stood on a balcony overlooking the capital city. So does this make me your consort? Jack asked with a smile. It makes you Earth's ambassador to the Lumerian Empire, Xylith replied, with special status as my personal advisor. That sounds like a diplomatic way of saying yes, Jack said. Xylith laughed, a sound Jack had come to treasure. Perhaps our personal relationship can develop naturally, without the pressure of ancient laws. I'd like that, Jack said softly. As would I, Xylith agreed, looking up at the stars. It seems the galaxy had a plan for us after all. In the distance, ships from Earth were arriving, bringing the first official diplomatic delegation. A new era was beginning for both their worlds, and it had started because every alien male in the galaxy had rejected one tiny alien princess, except a human man who saw beyond size to the true measure of greatness.